Atlanta, Georgia, September 17, 1991, 2:47 p.m. LaFace Records, Conference Room C. Antonio, L.A., Reid sits behind a desk that has absorbed 14 years of industry verdicts. His fingers drum a rhythm against manila folders containing the futures of artists who don't yet know they've already been declined. He is 35 years old. He has produced hits for Bobby Brown, Paula Abdul, and Pebbles. He has heard 11,000 auditions in his career. He believes he knows the difference between potential and fantasy. In 30 seconds, a 13-year-old boy from Chattanooga will stand in front of him and sing one note, a single, sustained tone that shouldn't contain multitudes but does. And L.A. Reid will raise his palm in the air like a conductor stopping an orchestra mid-crescendo. Not because something is wrong, because his entire framework for recognizing talent has just become obsolete. What happens in the next 4 minutes will be described, 30 years later, by the junior A&R assistant in the room as the moment I stopped trusting my education and started trusting my goosebumps. This isn't a story about a boy who could sing. This is a story about what happens when genius refuses to wait for permission, when it walks into a room designed to contain it and simply doesn't fit. To understand what L.A. Reid expected, you must understand what Conference Room C was designed to produce: efficient elimination. The carpet was commercial grade, speckled gray to hide stains. No windows, windows created psychological escape routes, and auditions required concentrated reality. The fluorescent lights hummed at 60 Hz, a frequency that made everyone look slightly drained. There was a Yamaha upright piano against the south wall, slightly out of tune in the upper register. There was a JVC boombox on the credenza for backing tracks. There were precisely 4 chairs. The room's dimensions were 14 feet by 18 feet. The walls were painted contractor beige. The air conditioning rattled every 11 minutes, a mechanical cough that had interrupted countless dreams mid-phrase. This was not a room designed for miracles. This was a room designed for sorting. L.A. Reid had seen 42 auditions that week. There was a girl group from Valdosta who harmonized perfectly, but had identical haircuts and no individual presence. There was a rapper who'd written a diss track about Crease Cross that would have been devastating 3 months earlier. There was a 16-year-old with a 4-octave range who couldn't make eye contact with another human being. This was September 1991. Boys II Men's End of the Road had been #1 for 9 weeks. Every young male R&B singer in America was attempting to recreate that particular alchemy of vulnerability and vocal control. Most were confusing the map for the territory. L.A. Reid had accumulated convictions about what a 13-year-old voice could contain. He had produced child artists. He understood the mechanics: underdeveloped chest voice, limited emotional range, a tendency toward imitation rather than interpretation. He had a framework, and frameworks, he had learned, protected you from wasting time. Seated to L.A. Reid's left was Marcus Daniels, 22 years old, 6 months into his position as junior A&R coordinator. Marcus had graduated from Morehouse with a degree in music business. He had earned a 3.87 GPA. He had written a thesis on the industrialization of black vocal performance, 1955-1990. He carried a leather portfolio containing a rubric he designed himself, a scoring system with categories for pitch accuracy, stage presence, emotional authenticity, and commercial viability. Marcus believed in measurable excellence. He believed that genius announced itself through consistency, through preparation, through hitting every mark on a predetermined map. He had been taught by professors with accumulated experience that the music industry was a science of pattern recognition, that if you studied enough successes, you could reverse engineer the formula. He was about to learn that some things cannot be reverse engineered. Marcus watched as Usher Raymond IV entered Conference Room C at 2:51 p.m. The boy was wearing a jacket that was 2 sizes too large, navy blue, with shoulder pads that extended past his actual shoulders. His mother had purchased it from a J.C. Penney in Chattanooga because she believed it made him look professional. The sleeves covered his knuckles. Marcus made his first note: poor presentation, unclear self-image. Usher's hands were shaking. Not theatrically, not in a way designed to evoke sympathy. They were shaking the way hands shake when a nervous system is receiving more input than it can efficiently process. A slight tremor in the fingers, a tension in the wrists. Marcus made his second note: high anxiety may affect vocal control. But then something happened that Marcus's rubric had no category for. Usher looked directly at Reid, not with defiance, not with false confidence, but with a quality of total presence that seemed incompatible with his shaking hands. He held eye contact for 3 full seconds. Then he said, in a voice that hadn't finished changing, "Thank you for making time to hear me, sir." No preamble, no story about being discovered at a talent show, no explanation of how his grandmother had called in a favor to get this meeting. Just gratitude, delivered with the same tone a grown professional might use in a business negotiation. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a small recalibration he didn't yet have language for. Reid gestured to the center of the room. "What are you going to sing for me?" "End of the Road, sir, by Boys I Men." Marcus suppressed an internal sigh. Of course, the safest possible choice. The song every R&B hopeful had been covering for 9 months, the audition equivalent of admitting you had no original thoughts. He glanced at Reid, expecting to see the micro-expression of disappointment that Reid had perfected, a slight tightening around the eyes, a barely perceptible lean backward. But Reid's face remained neutral. "Go ahead," Reid said. Marcus clicked his pen, ready to begin the evaluation. The boy closed his eyes. And Marcus Daniels learned the difference between what he knew and what he assumed. Usher didn't begin with the first verse. He began with the bridge, the vulnerable section, the part that comes after the relationship has already ended, where the lyric shifts from anger to acceptance. "Girl, I know you really love me, you just don't realize." Most singers approach this section as a technical challenge, a chance to demonstrate range, to showcase runs, to prove they'd studied the original. It was a performance opportunity. Usher approached it as a confession. His voice entered the room quietly, not tentatively. There's a difference. Tentative means uncertain of destination. Quiet means certain the listener will lean in. Marcus's pen stopped moving. The tone was wrong, not incorrect, wrong in the sense that it violated expectation. A 13-year-old boy shouldn't have access to this particular texture of regret. The vocal cords were physiologically incapable of the weight being carried. The life experience wasn't there. But the understanding was. Usher wasn't singing about a romantic relationship. He was singing about loss itself, the universal grammar of ending, the way human beings process the gap between what they hoped for and what actually happened. He had translated the specific into the eternal. Marcus glanced at Reid and saw something he'd never seen in 6 months of auditions. Reid had stopped taking notes. His pen was resting on the legal pad. His hands were folded. His attention was total. Usher moved into the chorus. "Although we've come to the end of the road, still, I can't let go." And then it happened. There's a moment in the chorus where the melody descends on the word, naturally. A step down that requires the singer to pull back, to make space, to allow vulnerability to exist in the same phrase as strength. Most singers treated it as a rest stop before the big finish. Usher treated it as the entire architecture of the song. When he hit that note, When his voice softened and bloomed in the space between control and surrender, Reid raised his hand. "Stop." The word cut through the room like a stage light going dark. Usher's eyes opened. For the first time, Marcus saw fear flash across the boy's face, not panic, but the sudden awareness that he had miscalculated, that he had misunderstood the assignment. In the music industry, being stopped mid-performance meant one of two things. You were so inadequate they couldn't bear to continue, or you had done something so unexpected that the existing framework needed to be paused and examined. The boy didn't know which this was. Neither did Marcus. Reid leaned forward. His voice when he spoke was quiet, almost gentle. "Don't move. I need you to do something for me." Usher nodded, his oversized jacket shifting on his narrow shoulders. "Sing that phrase again, just the naturally part. But this time I want you to tell me, not explain, just tell me, what you're thinking about when you sing it." This was not protocol. Marcus had never heard Reid ask an audition candidate about their internal process. The industry didn't care about process. It cared about product. But Usher didn't hesitate. "I'm thinking about my dad," he said quietly. "He doesn't live with us anymore, and my mom tells me it's natural, that sometimes people love each other but can't stay together. So when I sing that word, I'm thinking about how something can hurt and be natural at the same time." The silence that followed was not awkward. It was sacred. Reid sat back in his chair, exhaled slowly. Then he did something Marcus had never witnessed in a professional audition setting. He stood up, walked to the Yamaha piano and sat down. "Sing it again," Reid said, "and I'm going to play under you." What happened in the next 90 seconds was not an audition. It was testimony. Usher sang the phrase again. "It's unnatural, you belong to me, I belong to you," and Reid began to play soft, searching chords underneath. Not accompaniment, not direction. Following, the man who had produced platinum records for some of the biggest names in contemporary music was following a 13-year-old boy's emotional instinct, letting the child lead, letting the melody go where it needed to go rather than where the arrangement suggested. Marcus watched Reid's hands on the keys, the way they hesitated before each chord change, the way they left space, the way they refused to impose structure. This is what mastery looks like when it recognizes itself in an unexpected vessel. Usher's voice began to open, not louder, wider. The sound expanded vertically, finding overtones that shouldn't exist in an adolescent instrument. He wasn't performing technique. He was allowing emotion to dictate form, trusting that the voice would follow where the heart led. And then he did something that Marcus would spend the next 30 years trying to explain to students. He made a mistake. On the word "you," his voice cracked. Not dramatically, a small fissure in the upper register, the kind of vocal break that happens when a 13-year-old boy's larynx is still developing, when the instrument is caught between childhood and maturity. In a technical audition, this would be marked as a flaw. But Usher didn't panic, didn't try to cover it, didn't apologize with his eyes. He used it. He leaned into the crack, let it become part of the emotional architecture, transformed the instability into productive tension. The break became the point, the moment where the performance stopped being about vocal perfection and became about human truth. The resolution, when it came, felt inevitable precisely because it had approached from the unexpected side. Reid's hands stopped moving on the piano. The room forgot how to breathe. Usher opened his eyes and looked at Reid, not seeking approval, not asking was that okay, but simply present, waiting, complete in what he had offered. Reid stood up from the piano bench, walked back to his desk, sat down, picked up his pen, put it down again. Then he looked at Marcus. "Clear my afternoon." Marcus blinked. "Sir." "Clear my afternoon. Cancel the 4 p.m., push the 5:30. I need to make some calls." Reid turned to Usher. "Sit down. I want to know everything about you. Where you've trained, who you've studied with, what you've been listening to, how you think about music." The boy sat, the jacket bunched around his shoulders. "I haven't had formal training, sir," Usher said quietly. "I sing in church. My mom plays gospel records. I listen to a lot of Donny Hathaway and Marvin Gaye because my grandmother loves them." Reid leaned forward. "No vocal coach, no music theory." "No, sir." "Then how did you know to do what you just did? The way you use the break in your voice, that's not instinct. That's understanding structure." Usher thought for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but certain. "I didn't know I was supposed to hide it, so I just let it be part of the song." And there it was. The thing that no conservatory teaches. The thing that no rubric can measure. The understanding that the flaw is sometimes the precise doorway into truth, that what the rules exist to protect against might be exactly what the moment requires. Usher hadn't confused the map for the territory. He'd never looked at the map. 32 years later, Marcus Daniels teaches advanced A&R strategy at Berklee College of Music. Every semester begins the same way. He plays a clip from Usher's 2004 Super Bowl halftime rehearsal, a moment where, in front of 70,000 people, Usher stops mid-song because the sound mix is wrong. The band is confused. The director is furious. Usher stands at center stage, completely still, and waits for the problem to be fixed. No apologies, no explanations, just the quiet certainty that the performance deserves better than compromise. Marcus pauses the video. "Most of you think this is about perfectionism," he tells his students. "It's not. Perfectionism is fear wearing a productive mask. What you're watching is something else entirely." He lets the silence sit. This is a man who learned, at 13 years old, that genius doesn't wait for permission, that the truest thing you can offer is more valuable than the safest thing, that the flaw you're trying to hide might be the only door into authenticity. Marcus clicks to the next slide. It's a photo of conference room C at LaFace Records, unchanged except for new carpet. "I was 22 years old when I sat in that room and watched Reid stop everything for one note. I had a rubric. I had accumulated knowledge from professors with decades of experience. I had a framework for identifying talent based on measurable criteria." He looks around the classroom. And in 90 seconds, a 13-year-old boy with a cracking voice and an oversized jacket taught me that all of it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I wasn't evaluating talent. I was confirming my existing assumptions. A student raises her hand. "What made Reid different? Why did he recognize it when you didn't?" Marcus smiles, a sad, knowing smile. "Reid had something I didn't have yet. He'd been wrong enough times to stop trusting certainty. He'd signed artists who checked every box and failed. He'd passed on artists who violated every rule and succeeded. He'd learned to distinguish between accumulated knowledge and accumulated conviction. Knowledge says, this is what a 13-year-old voice can do. Conviction says, I don't know what this is, but I know it matters." Marcus pulls up a final slide, a quote from Reid's 2016 memoir. "Usher didn't audition for me. He showed me who he was, and who he was made every artist I'd signed before him look like they were performing an idea of talent rather than embodying it. I didn't sign him because he sang well. I signed him because he sang true." The room is silent. Marcus continues. "Usher sold 80 million records, 8 Grammys, redefined R&B for 2 generations. But none of that was guaranteed in Conference Room C on September 17, 1991. What was guaranteed, what Reid recognized, and what I was privileged to witness, was that this boy had already done the hardest thing an artist can do. He'd stopped asking permission to be himself." A student in the back speaks up. "What happened after Reid cleared his schedule?" Marcus leans against his desk. Reid called Usher's mother that evening, told her he wanted to sign her son immediately. Jonetta Raymond said no, said Usher needed to finish 8th grade first, needed to have a normal childhood for a few more months. So Reid did something no major label executive does. He waited, kept the contract offer open for 6 months, called once a month to check in, didn't pressure, didn't threaten to move on to someone else, just waited. Marcus pauses. Because when you meet someone who confuses nothing, who understands the difference between technique and truth without ever being taught the vocabulary, you don't let them walk away. You don't treat them like a commodity competing against other commodities. You clear your schedule and you wait. He closes his laptop. I've spent 32 years in this industry. I've signed 11 artists. 3 went platinum, but not one of them, not a single one, had what Usher had in that room. Total presence, zero performance, the courage to let the crack in his voice become the song instead of the flaw. A student asks, "Can that be taught?" Marcus shakes his head slowly. "No, but it can be unlearned. Most of you came here with incredible talent and a lifetime of training that taught you to hide your humanity behind your technique. You've been told that excellence means elimination of mistakes, of uncertainty, of anything that doesn't fit the map. What I'm asking you to do is harder than any vocal exercise or music theory exam. I'm asking you to risk being seen." He walks to the door, then turns back. Genius doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't argue its case. It doesn't explain itself or apologize for taking up space. It walks into a room designed to measure it, refuses to shrink, and sings one note that changes everything. The question isn't whether you're talented enough. The question is whether you're brave enough to stop performing your idea of talent and start offering your truth. The bell rings. The students gather their belongings. But they move slower than usual, quieter, like they're carrying something fragile out of the room.